Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another conversation for the AdvaTech podcast. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, Juana Attieh, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for AMLOK, who actually happens to be one of our clients over there at AdvaTech. So, Juana, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Of course, so am I. And so just to outline kind of what we'll be chatting about today, first we're going to get into a little bit about yourself, your background, and what some of your areas of expertise are. And then we'll move into a conversation around AMLOK, what AMLOK does and what it provides and the value proposition behind it. And then finally, we'll have a little bit more general conversation about entrepreneurship, startups, governance, blockchain, and all of that good stuff. So to start off, would you be able to tell everybody who doesn't know you a little bit about yourself and your background and exactly what it is that has brought you to today?
Yeah, for sure. So, originally I am Jordanian, Palestinian Jordanian. I was born and raised in Jordan. I studied management engineering at the University of Waterloo in Canada. And through that experience, I was able to do a couple co-ops. So I was able to work for 4 months and study for 4 months. And because of that, I was really able to most people graduate having secured a job. I graduated knowing what I didn't want to do. So then I took some time off and I traveled for a little bit, and and then I got into product management. I felt like that was the closest fit to myself and what I enjoy doing. And I started working at a software company that was building a crypto payment gateway. And that
Mm-hmm.
was my first real kind of like experience with cryptocurrency. But it was like different than most because I was working with the developers that were building kind of like, working on the Bitcoin node and working with Ethereum. So it was a very more technical introduction to that world. So even still, I couldn't grasp kind of like the what it meant for the world. And then a friend of mine introduced me to Cardano. Um, and so I started watching some videos, and then I came across this concept of, decentralized governance. And that's when everything kind of like clicked in my head, because throughout universities, I studied a lot of like complex systems and optimization and, simulation and all those sorts of stuff. And then I was like, decentralized governance, like allowing humans to self-govern themselves, like that is very interesting.
Mm.
So that was kind of like my first like awakening, I guess. And so I started to dig deep into that and created my like a stake pool on Cardano. And then I also quickly realized, like this technology is really meant to drive change for undeveloped countries. So
Mm.
I quickly thought of the region I was raised in and all of the problems that occurred there. So, like, for example, in Lebanon and the banking crisis and all of that. And so I was focused on, okay, how do we bring this technology into the region and help facilitate change there? So I went back to Jordan for a couple months and started networking with people and realized that we're too early in the region for any of this. So then I started working with a couple people on facilitating like a payment infrastructure using USDT in Lebanon and
Mm.
in cash economies in emerging markets. And that was, I think, my first real like step into entrepreneurship.
Right.
Worked on that for a couple of years, and then left. And then in between, obviously, I work a lot in decentralized governance and those types of projects. And then got introduced to AMLOK, and that was kind of like again this like amazing moment where it's like, wow, everything that I've been cultivating over the past few years fits together. And so far, it's been an amazing journey.
Okay, fantastic. And during that time, are there any sort of achievements or accomplishments throughout your journey that you would say you're most proud of?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things I'm most proud of is like, for example, we started a community for Cardano in the region, and that grew very much. I think for me, just being able to like inspire people and have them kind of believe in the things that we're doing, and then, working with a lot of like the most amazing minds. I think for me, that's a personal achievement. But then obviously that comes with perks like being named top 25 women in the space, or like gaining that sort of credibility. So yeah, I think throughout that journey, I think there was a lot of these types of achievements, but I think a lot of personal growth and just being really able to build amazing solutions with like amazing, amazing individuals. So I'm very, very proud of that.
Awesome. And so all of that brought you to AMLOK, which is, where your primary focus is today. Obviously, I would love everybody who doesn't know about AMLOK to kind of gain an understanding of what AMLOK is, what your mission is as a company, and to give us your sort of high level overview of what it is AMLOK does and what you're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. So with AMLOK, I mean, so far in the Web3 and crypto journey, we've really seen a lot of like amazing applications, but there's nothing that really bridges this gap between what people refer to as like the Web2 world and the Web3 world. So that's still very kind of segmented. What we aim to achieve is to be that gap. So we have built a solution that allows businesses to raise funds from their communities in a way that they've never been able to before. And then once the endeavor or the venture that they raised funds for starts to generate profit, or generate some income, automatically their backers will earn a portion of that revenue. So we were really trying to like build this, like, to empower local communities, to empower independent and small businesses, to allow investing in a way that it's never been able to be done before, and allow people to really support businesses that they love and just actually be very engaged and a part of that journey. And so this is kind of like, it's a win-win on both ends, because you're supporting businesses that you love, and because you have this new way of like engaging and being a part of the decision making, then it ensures their success, which therefore will ensure the success of your returns. And we use blockchain technology and smart contracts to automate a lot of this and to build it in a trusted manner that really didn't exist before. So that's really what we're trying to achieve with AMLOK. And yeah, I think it's been a great journey so far, where we're really pioneering in the space. We're working with, very grateful to be working with the minds of the likes of yours, because we are this gap, bridging the gap. Like, we're trying to build a blockchain company by still utilizing the most amazing things the traditional companies have, but still, leveraging what this new technology provides and promises. So yeah,
I mean, that's something that we've really enjoyed since we've been working with you guys, is figuring out where those bridges need to be laid, right? Because as you mentioned, there is certainly a gap between Web3 and Web2. And there's certainly a gap between the new generation of companies in blockchain and sort of the traditional foundational elements of companies that have come before. Now, what's interesting and is kind of ironic is that, one of the biggest purposes of blockchain is transparency and trust, right? These are two elements of blockchain that give it such a high value. But at the same time, it's been difficult for the Web3 community to build trust within the traditional business community with traditional businesses, et cetera. And I'm wondering sort of what your opinion is on what is the best way to continue building that trust. There have been positive and negatives in the growth of Web3 and the growth of cryptocurrency and the growth of blockchain. There have been ups and downs, but how do you see that sort of bridge being built between these two very distinct communities, where trust does become an element that is sort of unwaverable and can't be broken?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of like negative connotation around a lot of things being built in crypto, and to no fault of anyone really, because there is a lot of scams, and it's because of this open nature that Web3 has. I think like what we always say at AMLOK, like, we know we're going to be successful when we built a solution that, people are using this technology without knowing that they're using it, because that's really what it is. It's supposed to sit in the back end and just drive the tech innovation that it promises, but we're not there yet because of the user experience between Web3 and Web2 is still kind of separated. So I think one thing that will allow people in the traditional Web2 world to kind of understand Web3 more is when the user experience is very similar. When I'm paying in crypto the same way I am e-transferring, or something that's, familiar. And then as well, I think just the separation, like in the Web3 world, and our CEO always says this, like, people want to be anonymous, and there's this, the whole concept of like keeping your identity. But when we want to bridge this gap, like that kind of anonymity shouldn't really exist. But how do we still want to incentivize people to say, no, I am building in this space and this is who I am. So this is something. And then working with more closely with traditional businesses and education, I think, is still very important. So taking the time to educate and like, you know, and educate using real world examples. So like something that we haven't seen as much in the past is real world utility and real world use cases, but we're going to see a lot more of that now. So something I always do is just draw parallels between, you know, concepts, and that kind of allows people to picture it better and not have this us against them mentality that really exists in the space. But yeah, I think it really starts with first, like, let's crack the user experience and work together and work with the regulators and more create a more collaborative space.
Yeah, I completely agree that collaboration is key, and it certainly does seem that things are moving in that direction, albeit slower than anybody would like. But I think these things take time to have a very strong foundation, so it can't waver in the future. Now, as far as AMLOK itself, so one of the beautiful things about AMLOK is that you're taking a different approach to this concept of crowdfunding, right? So you have traditional crowdfunding platforms that have often been purely based on reward. You have other crowdfunding platforms that are based on equity. What you guys are doing and introducing that is unique is that you're introducing that element of being able to share in the revenue of the company, right? And this sort of provides a level of stability. And as you said, you have something in that battle when you put in an investment, and the future success of the company is then something that reflects on that investment you put in the first place. What I would love to know is that as AMLOK starts to grow, is that what does that experience look like for people on two ends? Because you have two target markets, essentially, right? You have the businesses that will be launching campaigns on AMLOK, and you have the users or the investors that will be making investments through AMLOK. So for a business, what does that process look like? And we'll, of course, link some of the videos that you have that'll kind of run people through the process. But if you could give a high-level overview, first on the business side, what that process looks like, starting a campaign on AMLOK.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've really focused on making the experience very seamless. So if you're really used to creating funding campaigns on GoFundMe or Kickstarter or any of the likes of these platforms, the experience with AMLOK doesn't differ so much. So there's a small step of verification, obviously, and then you can create a dashboard under your own branding. So something unique that we're doing is allowing businesses to create these campaigns using their own branding, and AMLOK is just really the technology provider. And so what happens is you can create a campaign. You specify the funding amount, the deadline. You can upload images and documents or anything to support your campaign, and then you can tier or fractionalize the amount. So, for example, you want to raise $100,000. You can start by people giving you $5 up to 10,000, and then based on that, you can. The rewards will be represented as NFTs. So you can upload an image that will live as the NFT. And that's it. The campaign is going to be published on the blockchain, and you get a link. And then this link you can share on your social media. You can share on your email campaigns. You can invite supporters manually. And it's really as easy as that. And then you can track the campaign's progress and see the supporters. And then the supporter side would be if I happen to stumble upon the link of this campaign, and then I'll just click on it, and it's under their own branding. I can select what tier I want to support. I support them, and then I'll get the NFT into my wallet right away. And so then when the project is ready to give these rewards, then as a supporter, I could claim this reward with this NFT that's exclusive to me. And this is how we're maintaining that, trust as well. And then all these funds sit in a smart contract. So AMLOK does not have any access to these funds. No one has access to these funds. And they can only get unlocked upon certain thresholds. So either when the campaign goals are fully reached, or in the future, obviously these are all configurable. So it's really as easy as that. But our roadmap is really intensive. Like, we're going to grow into a marketplace where you can search for these campaigns and list your campaigns and all of that. And then eventually we'll have what we refer to as a secondary marketplace, where these tokens or these claims that will give you access to the reward. And by that time, it would be a financial reward, which would be the
Mm,
revenue that's generated. Let's say you don't want to wait till you can claim it, you can sell it to someone else. And this way,
mm,
as well, these tokens can now be tradable. So we're
mm.
introducing a lot of these new mechanisms for businesses to access liquidity, and then to also, for supporters to have new ways of investing and getting funding and or getting funds and rewards and whatnot.
Now, as far as the sort of target business that would use something like this, obviously it's there's a wide range there, right? Do you think that AMLOK, what they're providing, is beneficial to companies all the way from a startup to a mom and pop shop, to an artist? Do you think that its use case applies to really sort of any realm of users or businesses that are looking to sign up and create a campaign and grow? Or do you think there is a sort of target market there, businesses that specifically in that categorization would benefit more from it?
So from a technology perspective, we've really built it as abstract as possible, that you could really, as a business, you can create a campaign that's relevant to you. But
Mm,
what we're really trying to focus on, the people we're really trying to benefit here, is the businesses that already have, some sort of revenue coming, and they want to expand their business. So you can
mm,
think of a local coffee shop that people love and support, and they go to all the time, and they want funding for either a new location or a new expensive coffee machine or whatever you might think of.
mm,
And those are the businesses that we really want to empower. We're seeing a lot of new small, medium enterprises and local independent business owners that have a community and have people that love and support them. So how can we take
mm,
that support one step further? And
mm.
this is really what we're trying to crack.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, as far as the users that come on to AMLOK and use it, I know you touched upon it a little bit, but for them, again, is it meant to be as simple as possible, this process? Is there an understanding of Web3, blockchain, cryptocurrency that people need to have in order to be able to use AMLOK? Or is it going to be designed in a way that even a basic understanding of technology is enough for people to be able to use the technology for it to be seamless? Is that the
Yeah,
goal?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So all the way from integrations where you can support in fiat currency to being a custodial service where, your funding is safe, and you don't have to withdraw. Like, all of these integrations that we will build within AMLOK is to bring this goal, to reach the goal of, like I mentioned, like, you're using this amazing technology without knowing that you're using it. It's trusted, and the user experience is really safe and seamless.
Mm,
So that's
mhm,
our end goal. Obviously, we're phasing it, so our current live product could be more catered towards crypto native users. So
mhm,
right now, you could create a campaign. You could have people support it, but they might need a little bit of understanding on how to support using USDC.
mm.
But this is just a matter of time. We're working on integrations with fiat on ramps and checkout solutions, and so eventually, yeah, it's going to be very, very, very much in the back end.
Okay. Now, I'd love to tear this down a little bit because I'm sure some people that are going to be listening to this, have a very rudimentary understanding of the blockchain, right? So, given with all the work that I've done with you, I know that you're phenomenal at explaining things, and maybe there's a few people here that you could help out with as well. So, really, what ended up happening with NFTs, as an example, when they first came out, is that, and this is no fault to people, but the understanding of NFTs that people had was sort of misconstrued, or non-fungible tokens. Really, people saw it purely in the use case that it was currently being used for, which was just the art itself. A lot of people thought that it was just a sort of method or medium for people to gamble and bet on the growth of the value of something. But I'd love to hear sort of your angle on, what it is about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that make it special, to somebody who maybe has no knowledge of cryptocurrency or blockchain. How would you explain the concept of an NFT to them?
Yeah, I know this is one of the more complicated kind of acronyms that is thrown around, and until now I haven't really met someone that can still explain it in a way that's
That's
super,
right.
super seamless. But the way that I think about it is, if you yourself, for example, just you're an artist and you created a painting, and you know you're the only person that created that painting,
Mm,
so there's only one of that painting, and let's say you verified it with, like you put a really unique signature on it, or you have like some sort of way to like track that this is the only thing that's ever been produced. So
Hmm.
then when this thing gets, when you come to buy, like it's like an authenticity badge, like from the manufacturer. Um, but what we've seen is counterfeit. So it's really, really easy to copy that painting, and there's almost no way to distinguish between if this is really the real one or not. And so
Hmm.
especially in the digital world where you can just take a screenshot of something, right?
Hmm.
But the way an NFT works is that on the blockchain, if it's issued, then there's this traceability factor where it's like a serial code, if
Hmm.
you want to think about it like that. And there's no way that like you can create another one. Like even if you take a screenshot of it, there's no way to track it that it's registered as the one that's the only one that's been created.
Hmm.
So it creates this sort of like exclusivity. So non-fungible means like there, it's like a unique thing. So you can only create one or 100 or 10, you know?
Right.
Um, and so like with NFTs now, we've seen is people like use them more for artwork, and they're the biggest use case is for those digital artists that create digital work. But when they mint them as NFTs, and then someone buys and sells them, you can automatically track, that this is the real one that's being sold and transferred out. But in
Hmm.
our case, what we're using NFTs for is the claim. So when you um, support a campaign, you get an NFT that will only sit in your wallet, and it's trackable. So this NFT is coded to this particular claim. So there's no way that another NFT could be used to claim this reward. And this is
Hmm.
what's so amazing about how this technology is built. So then when you receive an NFT and it's your turn to claim it, that's all we really care about is it this NFT that's being used. And it could be it could be that on the secondary marketplace I sold you my NFT. So I don't
Right.
really care about the end user at this point. I'm just caring about if the claim is attached to the right NFT that's being used to claim the reward. And this
Right.
is kind of what we're utilizing the term NFT for. And I'm
Hmm.
not the greatest at explaining this concept, but I hope this made a little
That's
bit
as
of
good of an
sense.
explanation as I've heard. You know what I mean? That's really right. It's really difficult to explain the concept, especially to somebody who doesn't even understand what the blockchain is, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
hear these terms, and obviously, there are people who do understand, and people are putting more effort into understanding what it is. I think it's clear to most people that these are things that are now here to stay. But it's the same concept as when the internet first came out, and the concept of email over regular mail, and people were asking the question of, why would I send something through a computer when I can just post it through the mail? And a lot of people didn't understand that it has inherent advantages, right? These developments in technology have inherent advantages. And I think a lot of the lack of wanting to learn, or not learning, has to do with the fact that, and this happens in a lot of industries, where at first the community was very defensive, right? About any challenges to the concept of the benefits of Web3, the benefits of crypto, the benefits of NFT, the benefits of blockchain. But one thing we've loved about working with you guys is that you guys are there to educate. You're there to teach people. You guys know that you're providing value. You guys know that there is a major benefit to doing something that's traditionally being done, crowdfunding, through other means, doing it through the blockchain, what benefit that provides, and you're willing to share that with people. That's incredibly important, and that's the only way that this this gap between Web3 and Web2 forms, right?
Yeah, I mean the best explanation that I've heard someone say a blockchain is it is a single source of truth.
Mm.
So it is a single source of truth, a resource that you can count on, that is immutable, that if something goes into that, it cannot be changed.
Mhm.
And so when an NFT is minted on the blockchain, you will know forever the source of this NFT, who it belongs
Right.
to, where it came from. You can trace, how much it's been sold, to who it's been sold. Obviously, and that's something in the blockchain that's, amazing, and it has its pitfalls as well. And I think this is the trust factors. Everything's transparent. So
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
I send you some money now on the blockchain, you'll see my wallet address, how much money I have in it, your wallet address. And so there's ways of anonymizing that by still maintaining the trust. But that's what's so amazing about the blockchain is everything is trackable, everything's transparent, and it's immutable. So it's not like if I created a digital art piece on my laptop, and then you like copy, like you had it on your computer, then like you can change, like you can go change this record, you know. But when it's replicated, so a blockchain is replicated on hundreds and millions of computers, so you can't go change a data set in one computer. It has to change on all of these computers, and this is what they call consensus mechanisms. So this is what's so amazing. It's a singular source of truth that just is immutable. Like it's yeah.
Now, one of the conversations that is recently being had is that how far away are we from being able to connect physical assets to a digital address, or, for example, using an NFT as a placeholder for it? There's been conversations about real estate and being able to connect, homes to an address on the blockchain where it's very clear what's being done, what's being transferred, who has ownership of what. Obviously, the government would make great use of this in order to make sure everybody's paying every cent of their property taxes. But obviously, there are some challenges there as well, because then you have a step, which is how do we connect the information from a physical entity onto a digital address? But do you see that as somewhere we're headed in the future, where everything down to personal belongings can be connected to the blockchain and using it as a method for transparency in the physical world, beyond digital assets, beyond everything that exists in Web3? Do you think that's somewhere we're headed?
Undoubtedly, yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a lot of new advancements in that link that you talked about, and there's been, I think this is really when we get to the point as well when manufacturers and builders and the people that are creating things are automatically linking it, having like a digital replica on the blockchain. This is where I think like this is where I think like this is gonna start from. But till now, there's definitely been ways. So something that we're really doing different in the real world asset tokenization aspect is right now, for example, when they say, okay, you can raise funds for a company and it's tokenized. What they really mean by this is there's a special purpose vehicle. It's another entity that gets incorporated, and that entity will own this asset. And then the shares from that entity is what's being tokenized. So we're bypassing all of that because we're saying we don't need to tokenize, we don't need to create an SPV to own this asset. What we're trying to tokenize is just the revenue that's being generated from this asset that's being public, like that's being out there to get crowdfunded for. And so we're trying to bypass that to kind of make it more seamless. Because even if they're saying, okay, we're tokenizing it, it's not the asset itself that's really being tokenized.
Yeah. And do you think because of that AMLOK can really be a technology provider to some of the traditional crowdfunding platforms? Do you think that, they can use your technology to sort of have access to an entire new user base, an entire new way of doing things? Is that something you foresee in AMLOK's future as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So like we are a technology provider. Our tech could be licensed. And because we built it in such a modular way and it's white labeled really, so you can, as a company, you can just put it all in the back end and just use the smart contracts and the fund distribution contracts and all of that in the back end. But it could all be under your own branding.
That makes sense. Okay, fantastic. Now there's sort of we've had a lot of conversation about the concept of blockchain and the transparency that it brings across. And I've heard a lot from you talking about governance and some of your experience in governance in blockchain. And I'd love to get, first of all, your general overview of what changes you think can be made and what sort of integrations with blockchain there can be. And outside of that as well, your perspectives on governance in general and how we can sort of foster transparency in businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest development that we've seen for governance is this concept of a DAO. So like a decentralized autonomous organization. So throughout history, I think we've been more used to organizations being structured more of like a top-down bureaucratic approach. But then when you go to like open communities and let's say like Bitcoin or open source communities or whatever, where the community is actually building the future of this technology, how do you get the community to decide on where this technology should be headed, or what's the next decision that should be made? Or, because a lot of these blockchain, they're not owned by anyone, they're not run by anyone. There's no centralized entity to decide on, how they progress. So how can you create governance mechanisms that ensure that, like, not the majority, but like, I guess the majority in some respect, but like most of the community are in consent over the future of this technology. And this is where like decentralized governance really plays a factor, and like how these mechanisms could be implemented. Because even when you think like, okay, even in our own governments now, like when you say democracy, okay, we start to think about, the voting mechanisms and all of the way these ways could be tampered. When you go in person and you write on a paper, there's so much that could go wrong there. But when you actually have your votes, for example, on a blockchain, there's that like tamper-proof evidence that, that you now have when it comes to voting. So it can't really be swayed or directed in a different way. But then as well, when you think of democracy, there's a lot of different elements to actually building a true democracy. So is it that, like, you're one person, so your vote counts as one? Or in the blockchain world, when you own the token, is it that the more tokens you own, the more votes you would have in the say? So there's a lot of different mechanisms for how your vote counts. And to be honest, like from working in the space, I really think it's headed towards more of like this reputation, meritocracy kind of approach, where the more you contribute positively, the more you contribute within an ecosystem, the more you're actively engaged, the more you vote, all these different metrics, the more say you will have in how it should be governed. And these are kind of like the tools and the mechanisms that we're building. But then obviously it comes with like, how do you protect against coalition or all these different like, civil resistance. But I think this has been the most interesting kind of thing to work on, is really like, how do you, when you say, okay, we want a democracy, okay, we want this to be community driven, we want this to be community run, what does that really mean? Like on the mechanisms perspective, like how can that actually be implemented? So
yeah, that's I completely agree. This is a sort of movement towards the meritocracy, where your level of contribution that can be measured in multiple metrics, not just one, is certainly the right way to go forward. But obviously, there are a lot of challenges there, and those challenges kind of align with if you look at ESG, right? So environment, social, and governance. Really, you have this challenge in a lot of different aspects. So transparency of governance is one of them, where it's not about coming up with the perfect system, but it's about how you actually measure it and what tools are in place to provide those metrics. And the same thing on the environmental side. It's not difficult to come up with the concept of, you need to do this better, or you need to, produce less CO2. The concept becomes, well, how do you measure that, and how do you audit that? If you look at traditional financial reporting and governance, risk, and compliance, well, there are metrics like IFRS that have been established over decades that are shared around the world. But when it comes to transparency and governance, when it comes to environmental factors, there's no one set reference point to go off of. There's no one set framework, no one set standard. This differs from place to place, and because of that, it differs from business to business. And that's somewhere where I see the concept of blockchain getting involved as well, when it comes to being able to track, record, and measure these things in a way that you completely remove the step of human error in reporting, right? Or not understanding what sort of responsibility belongs to who, what asset belongs to who. This makes a lot of things a lot simpler, not just in trading digital assets, but in the real world as well, and starts to build that bridge between Web3 and Web2.
Yeah, and also like who gets to decide, what gets measured, or what its impact is, or like, whether this is relevant for this, or so usually it's like a centralized entity of experts, let's say, that make those decisions. But now we have the ability to have this concept of like collective intelligence, where you have such diverse perspectives and input from all these different backgrounds have a say in these things. And so like
Mm,
imagine how much more credible that is in making
mm,
these like important decisions that then trickle down to so many other factors and businesses and implementation. So
mm.
I think the concept of DAO is like we're really gonna, and this is kind of where, touching back on AMLOK a little bit, like this is really where we see the future headed. Is like the goal of Web3, to me at least, is like it will enable community run infrastructure for
Mm.
like small communities. And you see it like even on Instagram, you have, you know, fitness people that have a community of millions of people. Okay, so now how can you tap into this community? Like, how can you create an infrastructure where this community is thriving, it's sustainable, it could like
Right.
build, it could, you know, like work together, it could make collective decisions. Like, how can you
Mm,
provide that so that each community is its own sustainable um collective? And that's what
mhm,
I think,
mhm,
to me,
mhm.
that's the promise of Web3 and things like decentralized governance and you know, blockchain and smart contracts, and tapping into like the power of community,
Mm.
which we see already. Like it's just not through AMLOK and other solutions, we're really trying to like enhance that concept.
And yeah, going back to AMLOK, that's one of the last things I'd love to speak to you about is that sort of impact that AMLOK can have. We've talked a lot about together while we've been working together. We've talked a lot about sort of what AMLOK can provide in terms of social benefits. Benefits. We've talked about CSR, corporate social responsibility. How AMLOK with the businesses that create campaigns can create pools for corporations that are looking on their sustainability reporting in order to be able to report that they've invested in a specific set of companies, how those customized pools can be built so simply compared to the amount of money that's spent on going out and looking for these categorizations of company. Well, AMLOK, through the way the technology works, would be able to build these customized portfolios and also providing access to funding for communities that may not be able to support themselves, right? We spoke a little bit about the concept of Native American communities and what sort of partnerships can be formed there in order to provide them access to funding that there is no other way that they could have that, where traditional lenders may not qualify for it. For traditional funding methods, they may not qualify for it. But what AMLOK does is it provides a new path to funding where everybody
Absolutely.
sort of shares in the success. And I'd love to hear your sort of take on it, on what sort of real beneficial impact you see behind all of the dollars. What do you see in the impact AMLOK having on the world, local communities, communities that don't have access to funding, people who don't have access to funding, and sort of what that means to you?
I mean, I honestly couldn't have said it any better than you've just said it. So it makes me really happy to hear you talk about it like this. And you've touched on it. It's exactly that. You know, through AMLOK, we really want to be able to empower local economy. I think that's what it is. Like we'll be able to drive growth in local economy and support small businesses and local communities, and exactly an alternative method for funding that's seamless. I mean, you see it everywhere, and it's been proven. We're not really like reinventing the wheel here. Like people are compassionate. They're altruistic. You know, you see it on GoFundMe campaigns where you fund concepts that just are close to your heart. So like
Mm,
we're adding a step further. It's like you can have direct return on this, and this is just an incentive in itself. You know,
mm,
so
mhm,
that kind of concept we think would be very impactful.
mhm,
And I think it's just this, yeah, like also allowing businesses to be able to flourish and thrive and focus on what they're good at and not really worry about liquidity. There's so much liquidity that people can tap into.
mm,
And I think there's like, I don't know where the study, and I can't remember it now, but it's really like humans are will like will contribute better when they're like we're social beings, you know? So like the more you can build infrastructure where like it's around like whatever I'm contributing is for the betterment of the entire ecosystem, including myself. This is like a positive feedback loop, you
mm,
know? And
mhm,
this is
mhm,
really something that we want to tap into with AMLOK, is like, how do we create this environment, this positive feedback loop where, you know, you're safe, you're secure, you're getting the reward that suits you, but you're still being able to create impact in a way that is considerable to you.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that's what's most exciting for me. And then obviously supporting the SDG goals of these giant companies, and because we know how flawed that is. Like, we know
Mm,
for now it's like we just need to check that box. So how about
that's
we
right.
give you, how about we give you a technology that, or a product that, measures impact the right way, is everything's trusted. And so you're not only checking the box, you're actually making impact, since you have to spend the money anyway. So this is the change we want to go for as well.
Yeah, it does the job of giving them what they need to do. At the same time, it provides them the resource to provide real impact. And
Exactly.
I think, yeah, no, I think that's something that's absolutely phenomenal. And I think just before we sort of wrap this up, I would love to hear that you yourself, as somebody who has been in innovation for so long in an industry that's as volatile as blockchain, you have two layers on this volatility. And what sort of advice would you give to someone young coming up, your former self in your past, if you saw them in somebody? What sort of advice would you give to somebody to be able to sort of find success and go forward the way you have?
Honestly, I think just be passion driven. I think we're way past the point in time now. Maybe not and I'll tell you this as someone that's building this infrastructure. So maybe this is like right up from the horse's mouth. Is that the saying? I don't know. But
Yes.
be passion driven, do what you love, because in the future, and it exists now, but it's only going to get better, where you will get a return by doing the things that you enjoy and the things that you love. We're all individuals, and if we need to all be the same, what change are we making? So it's just so important to like tap into your, become like a domain expert, do the things that you enjoy, and just tap into this inner compass, like, and that's something that I'm really grateful for. I don't know if I'm born with this or where it came from, but I have this like gut feeling inside me that's like, okay, this feels right, this feels right. And and sometimes I'm like, okay, like you need to start thinking of things like money and, a return. But I think to get to where you want and be happy with it, just always follow your passion. And I know this sounds so cliche, but it really is what's gotten me here. And so I think, and just be curious. I think there's so much we can learn online. Obviously, there's a lot of fluff, especially in the crypto space. So I think a recommendation is, if you're passionate about art, look into art use cases in blockchain. If you're
Mm,
passionate about real estate, look into real estate applications in blockchain. If you're, like, find your passion and then find an application that's being built using blockchain. And I think
mhm.
this is like that's helped me a lot. I read a lot of white papers. I saw, okay, what's the real world applications that are being built? And then you take it from that backwards. And that's how you really understand how this technology is driving change. Because if you're trying to understand it from a technical perspective, you're gonna get lost, so
Right.
yeah, so maybe like going to it from reverse makes the most sense, and that's what's been really helpful for me.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say, like, for us, it's been a pleasure working with you and your team. We have so much work left to do together going forward. We genuinely feel as though we're a part of your team. You guys have been very gracious. You are all incredible founders over at AMLOK. Really, as you said, passion driven, passionate about what you're doing, with something really substantial behind it. The concept is phenomenal, and I have no doubt that we will see a tremendous amount of success going forward. I also wanted to just thank you for taking the time and coming and having a chat with me. I really look forward to chatting with more of the team members on our end and your end. We'll get a couple panels together where we'll start to dive deep and get into some of the more nitty gritty of some of these concepts. And we will link a few things along with this podcast where we post it on YouTube, LinkedIn, etc., and make sure people have a way to go find out more about AMLOK and find a way that they can get involved as well. And as well as that, we'll link them to the website and to your personal profiles as well. But thank you so much, Joanna. It's always a pleasure, and I really appreciate you sharing and educating some of these things that you know.
No, the pleasure is all mine, Armin. I thank you for the opportunity, and we say this after every call, but it's really the belief that you guys have in us that keep us going, and we're really excited to be working with you. I will just say one last thing. at AMLOK now, we are live with our phase 1. So, and we're gathering some signups. So if you sign up with us, you get exclusive, as being some of the first people to sign up. As a backer, you would get exclusive access to campaigns that we'll be launching, exclusive access to rewards, lifetime discounts, things like that. So now's the time really that we're trying to, we're ready. So we're onboarding users and projects onto the platform, and it's early. So we'll be hands-on with everyone, and we're a really agile company. Like everything we do is iterative. So we want to be able to learn with you guys and build with you guys. And so we're very excited about that. And yeah, thank you very much again for the opportunity.
You got it. Everything you just mentioned will be linked below.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you so
Thanks
much,
so much,
Juana.
Armin. Pleasure.
Appreciate it.